Today, we're sharing the story of Laura, an artist who finds comfort in her loyal companion, Rusty, during a time of deep loneliness. Have you ever had a pet who became a lifeline during difficult times? We'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. When Michael left for his field assignment, I told myself it would be like all the others. He'd go, he'd explore the world as he always did, and he'd come back with stories of new landscapes and discoveries. But as the weeks turned into months, the house seemed to grow colder, and the walls of our little cabin felt more like a fortress than a home. In the beginning, I tried to fill my days with work. As a painter, I'd pour my emotions onto the canvas, hoping to shake the heaviness that had settled over me. But day after day, I'd find myself distracted, looking out of the window to the endless forest, waiting for any sign of his return. The loneliness I felt was new, deeper than I'd expected. Rusty, our golden retriever, was always near. Michael had brought him home a few months before he left, thinking he'd keep me company. And at first, Rusty had just been another presence in the house, a quiet, gentle soul who would wander from room to room, keeping me in his watchful gaze. But as the months went by, I found myself relying on him more and more. One cold autumn evening, I found myself sitting in the living room, staring into the fireplace, the crackling flames casting warm, flickering light across the walls. The house was silent, and I felt the ache of loneliness swell up within me. Rusty must have sensed it because he came over, nudging my hand with his nose. I looked down at him, surprised by the concern in his gentle brown eyes. Without thinking, I leaned down, wrapping my arms around him, burying my face in his soft fur. He stood there, quietly, letting me hold him. In that moment, he was more than just a pet. He was my companion, my anchor in a time when I felt like I was drifting. As the days grew shorter and the chill of winter settled over the woods, Rusty became my constant shadow. He'd follow me as I moved through the house, a quiet presence that filled the empty spaces with a warmth I hadn't realized I needed. There was something calming in the way he'd lie at my feet while I painted, his steady breathing a reminder that I wasn't truly alone. One gray afternoon, as snowflakes began to dust the ground, I decided to take a walk to the edge of the lake. Rusty trotted alongside me, his energy lifting my spirits. We made our way through the woods, my breath visible in the cold air. The world around us was silent, the only sounds our footsteps and the crunch of snow underfoot. At the water's edge, I found myself staring out over the frozen lake, thoughts of Michael and the life we'd built swirling in my mind. The loneliness seemed to press in all around me, but then Rusty nudged my hand, his eyes fixed on me with a kind of understanding that I couldn't quite put into words. I knelt down, scratching his ears as he leaned into me, his warmth radiating through the cold. In those moments, I found myself talking to him, sharing my thoughts and my worries as if he could understand every word. It felt silly at first, but as I spoke, the words came easier. He listened patiently, his head cocked to one side, as if he were truly absorbing every word. Rusty wasn't just a dog anymore. He was my friend, the one who stood by me when the silence felt overwhelming. As the snow began to fall harder, we made our way back to the cabin. Inside, by the fire, I curled up on the sofa, with Rusty lying beside me. His presence, steady and loyal, was the quiet solace I hadn't realized I was seeking. Each day, he was there, a small comfort in the vastness of my solitude, filling my heart with a quiet gratitude. Have you ever had a pet that became more than just a companion, especially during a time of separation or loss? Let us know in the comments below. As the weeks turned into months, the ache of Michael's absence settled in even deeper, filling the house in ways I couldn't escape. Every corner seemed to remind me of him, of the laughter and warmth that had once filled these walls. Yet, in the quiet of each day, Rusty became more than just a pet. He became the one presence I could lean on, the steady comfort in an otherwise empty home. One evening, after a particularly cold day, I sat by the fireplace, the heat radiating out into the room as the wind howled against the windows. Rusty lay beside me, his head resting on my lap, his warm fur comforting against the chill that seemed to linger in my bones. I absent-mindedly ran my fingers through his coat, feeling the softness beneath my hand, letting the simple act calm my thoughts. As I stroked Rusty's fur, memories of Michael would fill my mind, images of us sitting together, laughing and sharing quiet moments like these. The longing grew sharp, almost overwhelming, as if every bit of distance between us had become palpable, pressing down on my heart. Rusty shifted slightly, lifting his head to look up at me with those deep, understanding eyes, as if he sensed the ache within me. He'd nudge my hand, a small gesture that spoke volumes, and I'd feel a flicker of warmth and comfort that seemed to ease the edges of my loneliness. At times like these, I found myself talking to him about Michael, sharing thoughts I'd held close, unspoken. Rusty listened with an attentiveness that made it feel like he was truly there with me, as more than a dog, my confidant, my friend, and, in some way, my connection to Michael. Then, there were the nights when the house felt too empty, the silence too profound. Rusty would sense it, coming to sit by my side, offering his steady presence as I curled up under a blanket, the weight of loneliness pulling at me. He'd lie beside me, his warmth chasing away the chill, his steady breathing a comfort in the stillness. I'd close my eyes, feeling the soft brush of his fur, grateful for the solace he provided, even as I wished for the arms of the man I loved. Rusty had become my shelter, the quiet strength that held me together through each lonely night. And though he could never replace Michael, he was the companion who stayed, the presence that filled the void when nothing else could. And in the small moments we shared, I found myself not quite as alone. It was one of those nights when the silence felt heavier than ever, pressing in on me from all sides. The snow had been falling steadily all evening, blanketing the world outside in a thick, quiet white. I felt a restlessness take hold, a yearning to be somewhere, anywhere, other than alone in the house. The walls seemed to echo with emptiness, the reminder of Michael's absence sharper than ever. Without thinking, I grabbed my coat and scarf, and with Rusty at my side, I stepped out into the cold. The air was sharp and biting, and the snow crunched under my boots as we made our way to the frozen lake. The path was quiet, the only sound our footsteps and the soft whistle of wind through the trees. Rusty walked close to me, his golden coat dusted with snow, his warmth reassuring even in the bitter cold. As I reached the edge of the lake, I stopped, looking out over the frozen expanse. The moonlight glinted off the ice, casting a pale glow across the surface, and I felt a pang of longing as I thought of Michael. I wondered when he'd return, if he'd walk with me here once more, and if he missed me as much as I missed him. Lost in my thoughts, I took a step forward, my foot pressing down on what I thought was solid ice. But suddenly, I heard a crack, a sharp, ominous sound that echoed in the stillness. Before I could react, the ice beneath me gave way, and I plunged into the frigid water below. The cold was like a shock to my system, piercing through me with a fierce intensity. I tried to grab hold of the edge of the ice, but my fingers were numb, slipping against the slick surface. Panic surged as the icy water pulled me down, but then I felt something, a weight, a tug at my sleeve. Through my blurred vision, I saw Rusty, his teeth gently gripping my coat, pulling me towards solid ground with every bit of strength he had. With one final pull, Rusty managed to drag me out of the water and onto the shore. I lay there, shivering uncontrollably, gasping for breath, the cold seeping into my bones. Rusty stood over me, his warm body pressing close, as if to shield me from the chill. His loyalty, his courage, it was overwhelming, and I felt a surge of gratitude unlike anything I'd known. Somehow, I made it back to the cabin, stumbling through the door with Rusty at my side, his watchful eyes never leaving me. By the time I reached the warmth of the house, a fever had already begun to take hold, and I collapsed onto the couch, my body shaking from the cold and exhaustion. Rusty curled up beside me, his warmth a balm against the icy chill that had settled into my bones. Through the haze of my fever, I felt him beside me, his head resting on my lap, his soft whines filling the silence. He stayed close, his presence a steady comfort, watching over me as I drifted in and out of sleep. In those moments, Rusty was more than just my dog. He was my protector, my friend, my constant in a world that felt uncertain. As the night wore on, I felt his weight beside me, grounding me, reminding me that I wasn't truly alone. And though my heart ached with the absence of my husband, I felt a quiet comfort in knowing that Rusty was there, by my side, unwavering and loyal. Understood, I'll continue with a thoughtful and respectful approach, focusing on the deep companionship and emotional bond that Laura shares with Rusty as they navigate loneliness together. The emphasis will be on the comfort and solace she finds in Rusty's presence while handling her longing for her husband. Have you ever had a pet who became more than just a friend, a true partner in times of loneliness? Share your story in the comments below. After that night by the lake, something shifted between Rusty and me. He wasn't just a pet, and he was more than a friend. He was a part of my life in a way I hadn't anticipated, a steady, loyal presence that filled the hollow spaces of my heart, spaces left empty by Michael's absence. The days blended into each other as winter settled in, and Rusty and I developed a rhythm, a quiet dance that weaves comfort into the routine. I'd wake up to find him curled beside me, his warmth chasing away the chill that seemed to linger even with the fire roaring in the hearth. We'd spend our days together. Rusty, with his silent understanding, was my steadfast companion as I painted, read, and tended to the little details of our cabin life. Sometimes I'd talk to him about Michael, about the dreams we had built together. I'd tell him stories from before, sharing pieces of myself that even Michael might not have known. Rusty would watch me, his warm brown eyes filled with a calm, unwavering presence, like he knew how deeply I felt. Yet, there were moments when the loneliness became almost overwhelming, a pang of longing that would arise as I'd sit quietly by the fire or as I'd lie awake at night, staring at the empty side of the bed. In those moments, Rusty would be there, his steady breathing a comfort, his warmth a reminder that I wasn't alone. I'd close my eyes, letting his presence soothe me and allow myself to feel the quiet strength he brought into my life. One night, the snow was falling heavily outside, and we were tucked inside with a small meal, a glass of wine, and the comforting glow of the fire. Rusty lay beside me on the rug, and I couldn't help but smile at him, feeling a warmth bloom in my chest. His presence had come to mean more to me than words could express, a friendship that went beyond the ordinary, an unspoken bond of trust and love. As the snow fell in soft drifts outside, I felt the weight of solitude ease, replaced by a gentle contentment. I knew I missed Michael, missed the life we shared, but in Rusty's companionship, I had found a balm to the ache of his absence. We shared a life, in our quiet way, and I knew that whatever happened, Rusty would be there by my side, loyal and true. Christmas had always been a time of joy for Michael and me, a time of warmth, laughter, and quiet moments spent together by the fire, wrapped in blankets with mugs of hot cocoa. The memories filled my mind as I decorated the cabin, hanging a wreath by the door and draping a few lights around the living room. But this year, the holiday felt different, hollow somehow, without Michael by my side. It had been so long since I'd heard from him, and the absence felt sharper than ever. Still, I wanted to mark the occasion, to bring a sense of normalcy and warmth into our little cabin, if only for my own peace of mind. I set up a small table, laid out a simple meal, and lit a few candles. Rusty sat by my side, watching me with those calm, knowing eyes, as if he sensed the melancholy that had settled over me. As the evening deepened and the snow fell quietly outside, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the fire, letting the memories wash over me. I thought about the Christmases Michael and I had shared, the laughter, the long conversations, the way he'd look at me across the table with that familiar smile. My heart ached with the weight of those memories, the bittersweet reminder of what was missing. Rusty sat beside me, close enough that I could feel his warmth, and I placed a gentle hand on his head, grateful for his presence. I raised my glass, whispering a quiet toast to the man I loved, wherever he might be, and felt the tears prick at the corners of my eyes. As the hours passed, I drank a little more, allowing the warmth of the wine to ease the edges of my loneliness. Rusty stayed close, his head resting on my knee, his gaze steady and comforting. I found myself leaning into him, grateful for his quiet companionship, his unwavering presence. In that moment, he felt like more than just a dog. He was my anchor, my friend, the one constant in a world that felt increasingly fragile. I tensed, feeling the gentle, soothing power of his presence beside me, and for the first time that night, I allowed myself to give in to my most primal human instincts. Rusty had become a refuge, a comfort, a presence, a reminder that I was not truly alone. And as I fell asleep, the warmth of his loyalty surrounded me like a blanket, a quiet reminder that even in the darkest, loneliest of times, peace could be found. The early light filtered softly through the window, casting a gentle glow over the room. I opened my eyes, slowly coming awake, and felt the familiar warmth of Rusty curled up beside me. His steady breathing was a quiet rhythm, a reassuring presence that had become my anchor in this long, lonely season. I lay there for a moment longer, letting the comfort of his warmth wrap around me, allowing myself the luxury of lingering, of just being. With Rusty beside me, I felt a kind of peace, a quiet assurance that maybe, just maybe, everything would be all right. I reached out, running a gentle hand over his soft fur, grateful for his companionship through it all. Eventually, I stirred, slipping out of bed and wrapping the blanket around my shoulders. I crossed the room, the wooden floor cool under my feet, and made my way to the window. Outside, the world was painted in a pristine blanket of snow, the soft white expanse broken only by the first hints of morning sunlight. The sight reminded me of my own heart, a space that had felt empty and cold for so long, now touched by a warmth I hadn't expected. Standing there, wrapped in the stillness of the morning and the quiet presence of my loyal friend, I felt a flicker of hope, a sense that this new day held something different, something soft and gentle that could help heal the ache within. Rusty trotted over, pressing his head against my hand, as if to remind me he was still there, as steady as ever. I smiled down at him, feeling the first real sense of peace I'd known in a long time. Together, we stood by the window, watching the world awaken under the soft light of the new day, and I felt ready to face it, knowing I had found strength and solace in the most unexpected place. Have you ever had a pet who gave you comfort during difficult times? Share your story with us in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey with Laura and Rusty, please like, subscribe, and join us for more heartfelt stories of resilience, love, and the incredible bond between humans and their pets.